The next episodes of Thriving Construction come straight from Future Build. Huge thanks to Eco Cocoon. The space was great for chats, acoustics, and even better well-being.
I think my real passion is just changing industry. The more I thought about it, I think that's where it sits. I could talk to you passionately about concrete. I actually love concrete. Like most of the buildings I designed were designed out of concrete. My challenge with concrete is I am at the moment, and maybe there are people here who can help me, I'm at the moment struggling to see how concrete goes beyond do no harm within the current context. So I think we could change the context. We could do some things to think much more about the supply chain of things like sand and aggregate. We could think about the water we're using. We could think about the way we process and create cement. You did a chat, I think it was probably a while ago, but I found it on your tube with someone who was looking at magnesium-based cement to make low carbon or zero carbon concrete. I think, we could be having those conversations. I just think the infrastructure in terms of the real infrastructure and also the sort of the mental infrastructure to imagine what that might look like, I think it's harder to get there. I feel with growing materials you can. So I think I'm passionate about change generally. It's just at the moment, natural building materials, it feels like it's lower hanging fruit, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? But just going back to that podcast, it was with a guy called Barney Shanks.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, I don't know if he picked up on this, was that he said that the technology is already there to do that, and he's taken it to the big cement boys, and girls, but they're not interested, because their current system works really well for them.
Yeah, of course it does.
And they don't want to break the status quo.
Yeah, of course.
They didn't say it in those words.
Yeah.
That's effectively, the reason why his thing is not being used at scale.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's part of the thing about regenerative design is think about systems change and how we create systems change. And as engineers, our role and architects and other people in the built environment, we need to understand the impact we can have and the agency we carry. So I think the most exciting thing at the moment about a design project is the specifications. And it's exciting because no one ever cares about the specifications. Like, they are the thing that get done last, they get done in a rush, but they are absolutely full of opportunity to change the way we do business. So at the moment, the way that we produce cement works for the cement companies, but our specifications aren't challenging our cement companies to think differently. And actually, we're not even at the point where we know what questions we should be asking about cement companies. So I feel like it's that there is the opportunity, but we gotta be agents of change.
And I think that's the thing is that unless you ask a high level question, you're never going to get a high level answer.
Correct.
And unless you're aware enough to be asking or thinking about what different questions can I ask, then that question is not even going to get tabled. Yeah, and that's kind of the way that it feels at the moment, is that there's so many people that are around that know that they want something different.
Yes.
So they don't know what question to ask.
Yes.
And the organizations that can make the change aren't interested in the questions because they are just wanting to keep the status quo, because of course that's where that value or money transaction goes on with them.
Yeah, although that's true for them right now, right? But if the world changes, their models may not work so well.
So what is it that, because I'm with you, there will be change, or there could be change, or the hope is that there will be change.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the world changing or things changing, is like, what is it that's going to change? And what is it that we can do to try and expedite that change?
It's a great question. So I think the best example that I personally know of the change is around embodied carbon. So I joined industry in 2000. At that point, embodied carbon was a non-issue. People weren't talking about it. In fact, I remember when I worked in industry, probably between all the way from 2000 to 2015, I was told embodied carbon is a non-issue and mechanical and electrical engineers are basically sustainable engineers. Like, you as a structural engineer, you have nothing to do with sustainability. Just make sure our building doesn't fall over. That's all we care about. And partly that was because other, operational carbon at the time was significantly higher, so it was correct. But partly, I think there was also, we weren't advocating for ourselves in terms of what we could do. And also, we thought it was too hard to calculate the embodied carbon. Like, that was the message that was out. But then what happened is a few people started actually doing the work. So 2008, the inventory for carbon and ICE, the inventory of carbon and energy, or whatever I think it's called, came out, which actually started to say, this is the embodied carbon and this is the embodied energy in the manufacture, cradle to gate, of this material. So suddenly we got this information and we can go, oh, okay, well, that's useful. But I still can't apply it on a project because it feels like a lot of work. But then people start going, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I've got this data. And actually, it's not that much work. So one of my ex-colleagues, Katie Simons, for example, she was working for Ramble at the time in the Cambridge office. And she decided off her own back to calculate the embodied carbon of different options. This is probably 2011, 2010. And presented them back to the client and said, this is the embodied carbon for these options that we're proposing. Now, no one else I know was doing that. Now, we organised a research event to celebrate like the best practice in our organisation. And Katie came and spoke at that. And I was like, this is amazing, right? This is really, really exciting. And then other people started doing the same thing, right? So she's not the only person. Lots of people are doing this, but I'm aware of her work. And then someone like Simon Smith, who just happened to be her boss, he sets up his own practice and he starts calculating the carbon, not on a few projects, but on every single project. And he now produces a report every year that maps how much carbon they have specified from the day their practice started until now. And so this is like really taking ownership of their work, the impact of something. They're thinking about how to reduce it, but they're also understanding the impact. And then we get people starting to produce tools that calculate this stuff. So like Elliot Wood produced an online tool which they share for free through the structural engineering website. And you go, oh, actually, I can start to do, and then we get BIM, which is a technology, nothing to do with carbon, but produces all of the quantities of all of the materials in our building. So we go, oh, well, something that was really hard is actually a lot easier now. And actually, you can just create a spreadsheet and it tells you how much carbon. And suddenly we've got this world where we're now starting to say we should be actually not just calculating carbon, but we should have like ways of comparing across different organizations, how we calculate it. And then we should be benchmarking it. Then we should be challenging people. You need to reduce your carbon, embodied carbon on a structure from this to this or whatever it might be. Now, that hasn't happened overnight, right? That started with a few people working on small projects, challenging the status quo and going the extra mile. And then they didn't just do the work, they shared the work. So other people started to hear about it. And over time, that has snowballed. So I think we can feel a bit helpless. Like I worked on projects and felt really frustrated by the lack of change. But actually, if we keep sharing the stories, if we keep trying to do the good things, if we share when they work, if we share where they don't work and explain what are the barriers and see if other people have had the same problems, and then we can start to say, this is a systemic barrier that is stopping us moving forward in this space. We all want to get to here, but we all need to solve this problem. Let's start talking about who solved it. Do you know what I mean? And we start to work not as individuals, but as a community of practitioners to try and bring around the change we actually want to bring around.
Yeah. I think that is what you're saying is really powerful there, because it's about the intentional consistency.
Yes.
So it's about just knowing that it's not going to be done in 2 weeks or 2 months or even 2 years.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's really important just to be consistent.
Yeah. And, I graduated in 2000 and we were already talking about the climate emergency in 2000. Right? It's not a new conversation, it's an old conversation. But the world has moved. Our organizations, the way we do business has changed.
Thanks for watching to the end. I think that you'll like this, but before you do that, just make sure that you've commented and liked below, and also that you subscribed.